students, welcome to our YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to discuss about Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes, one of the most important theorists when it comes to structuralism and post-structuralism. So he is someone who has his foot on both these departments, structuralism and post-structuralism. In the previous videos, we have already discussed about structuralism. What is structuralism? Structuralism ke andar basically theorists used to say that everything is in structures. There are so many different events. Everything is generally going to be in a very structured manner. While the post-structuralists would say that you cannot decide what is the structure, you cannot see ki sahi galat kya hai, how will you study the things, that is not easy. There is no one method, there is no one way of studying anything. That is what the structuralists were saying. While that is what the post-structuralists were saying. While the structuralists used to say that everything that you are doing is compartmentalized. For example, language. It has rules. It has different regulations. Language is the best example when it comes to structuralism. So Roland Barthes was a French literary theorist. He was an essayist and a philosopher as well as a critic. And he is someone who used to work on the different linguistics aspect also. So he is a semiotician as well. His ideas explored a diverse range of fields and influenced the development of many schools. He worked in the school, or you can say for the school of structuralism, anthropology, literary theory, as well as post-structuralism. So it is seen that he starts his career as a structuralism, but then he finds his foot in the post-structuralism as well. Okay, so he starts as a structuralist, then he develops as a post-structuralist. So there is these overlapping things that you will find when it comes to Roland Barthes. And what is the time frame? The time frame is 1915 till 1980. This is the period of Roland Barthes, one of the most important French literary theorists. Barthes actually tries a lot to talk about semiology. Semiology के बारे में उन्होंने बहुत बात करी. And what is semiology? It is the study of language only. There is this important book that he has written called as The Elements of Semiology. The Elements of Semiology, where we find him, directly talking just as Saussure was talking. So we have Fernand de Saussure who said that there is language, and language is a system of signs. Language is always a system of sign, and there is one sign that is, of course, giving one meaning. So there is signifier and signified. What Roland Barthes is saying, Roland Barthes begins to claim that sign exists only in language and not outside it. That is why you cannot say that there is arbitrariness, right? There is meaning for everything. This is what he was saying. So, right, semiology is a discipline that Saussure gave birth to. It is classified into 4 elements by Barthes, and Barthes will again talk about 4 elements that Saussure has also talked about. He'll talk about the language and the speech. What do you mean by language? What do you mean by speech? He will positionalize that. Then he, of course, talked about the signifier and the signified. These are the things that we have already discussed. Then he talked about the syntagmatic and the system also. Syntagmatic and the system. I'll show you one example. Then this topics, the syntagmatic and system would be clear to you. And then there is denotation and connotation. So what is the denotated meaning? Denotated meaning is the dictionary meaning. And connotated meaning is what? It is the meaning that is something that can be associated with that picture. You go one step further, that is connotative meaning. Denotative meaning is the dictionary meaning. Okay, so let us discuss about these words, the syntagmatic and the system. So what is it? They are playing shows the syntagmatic relationship. They are playing. So the relationship between they are and playing is called as the syntag. It is called as the syntag. This is the word that he has coined. While the relationship between they are playing and we are watching, where they and are can be changed. So it can be we were playing. It can be they are watching. So we see that the substitution effect can be seen here. They and are, or we and were can be changed. That is why this is called as a system. It is called as what? It is called as a system. So he has some qualities of whatever Saussure was talking, while some are different words that he has introduced in his study, or you can say in his book, The Elements of Semiology. Right, so let me read it again. We are playing shows the syntagmal relationship, while the relationship between we are playing and we were playing, where we and were are replaceable with they and are. According to Barthes, it is called as the system. And signifier and signified we have already discussed. What is language and what is speech? We already know, right? And what is denotation? It's the dictionary meaning. And what is connotation? It is the underlying meaning that you can find out of something. So if I say you are as pretty as a rose, or maybe take this example, home. If I write this word home, so this means for someone it can be a place where one stays. Maybe for someone he associates the word home with, say, love, a place where you are loved, where you feel safe. So it's a place where you are most welcome. So these are the connotative meanings that are attached to it. Okay, so it does not mean that there is one single meaning. Then, this is Roland Barthes. The time frame, as I told you, is 1915 to 1980. He was someone who started by writing as a structuralist, and then he became the post-structuralist. He is somewhere in between with Michel Foucault, with Jacques Lacan and Julia Kristeva. When it comes to semiology or semiotics, who introduced it? It was Fernandez de Saussure who introduced it and gave the concepts of the signifier, that means the word, the signified, that means the meaning, and the referent, that is the example. We have already discussed this. What do you mean by lang? Lang is the system. As I gave you the example of a chess game. So the systems and the rules are lang. And what do you mean by parole? The utterances, the personalized utterances are called as parole. What is denotation? Denotation is the literal meaning reliant to the cultural conventions. It is reliant to the cultural conventions. And what is connotation? It's the personal meaning that someone has. And he was a structuralist first. So what he meant that everything is going to be in structures. He has written, and of course he is going to contribute to the structuralism as a philosophy a lot, and he is going to use the various terms that were developed by Claude Lévi-Strauss or by Fernandez de Saussure. So Claude Lévi-Strauss also talked about binary oppositions. The meaning of the idea depends on what it is not. So if you want to know that, okay, I am Aanchal, why am I Aanchal? I am Aanchal because I am not Bhavya. Right? So when there is one thing you have to believe, you have to look at the opposite. Right? So the meaning of an idea depends on what it is not. So you have binaries everywhere, hot and cold. You have man and woman. And what are these post-structuralist people talking about? They will say that yes, there are binaries, but one side is definitely more important. This is what the post-structuralists would start to say. There are different works that Roland Barthes did that is associated with your structuralism. It is associated with structuralism. We have the Writing Degree 0, 1953. Methodologies, it was a collection of essays, 1957. We have the Photographic Message, 1961. The Rhetoric of Image, 1964. Then we have an Introduction to the Structural Analysis of Narratives. Introduction to the Structural Analysis of Narratives, 1966. Then we have the Fashion System, 1967. And some people also sometimes read SZ, sir, that came out in 1970 as a text that is very much related to structuralism. So we will talk about the codes here. We'll talk about this work here, but basically these works that I read are associated with Roland Barthes as a structuralist. And when it comes to post-structuralism, it is Jacques Derrida who introduced the concept of deconstruction, and this comes under post-structuralism. So what do you mean by difference? Difference is the word that we have in our literature. It is introduced by Jacques Derrida. So it combines differ and defer. They determine the meaning of the signs by analyzing their context. These contexts are made up of various signs. We determine the meaning of these signs with their context. So there is always a difference between the two things. That is why difference as the word was used. The meaning was always differed. It cannot be contained. What is post-structuralist saying? Post-structuralist said that you cannot contain the meaning in one box or in this circle, right? If you think that one thing that you have decided is correct, it is never correct, because nothing can be compressed into one self. Okay, while the structuralist said that everything is in order, everything is in events, everything has events, everything has proper orders. The post-structuralist said that you can never positionalize things, you can never compartmentalize things. This is the difference between structuralist and post-structuralist. So denotation is another level of connotation. This is what the post-structuralist people started to say. So whatever text we are going to read, you will find that Roland Barthes sometimes will appear to you as a structuralist and sometimes as a post-structuralist, right? So bifurcating him as a structuralist or post-structuralist is extremely difficult. So in this video, you will have some texts that I will introduce to you. You will have some words that he talked about and you're good to go, right? You don't have to extremely positionalize him, or you don't have to think him as a structuralist or a post-structuralist as per se, because there are overlapping instances. For example, readerly and writerly text, he talked about it. So I haven't introduced that concept in this video because it is more associated with the post-structuralism. Okay, so like this you need to understand things. Then they actually privilege the binary. What Derrida said, that one side is culturally marked as positive and the other as negative. Okay, so the death of an author, that came out in 1968, the Empire of Science 1970, SNES or SZ 1970, Pleasure of the Text 1975, Roland Barthes by Roland Barthes 1975, A Lover's Discourse Fragments 1977, and Camera Lucinda 1980. So these are the works of Roland Barthes. Let us study the first work, Methodologies. Methodologies is a work that came out in 1957. It is the most important work when you talk about Roland Barthes as a structuralist, because he is saying that myths are also like structures, right? So Roland Barthes helped found the modern science of semiology, applying structuralist or semiotic methods to the myths. Just as the language is a system, the myths are also system. Everything is coming back from somewhere. Like Oedipus complex से साथ अगर आप उसे read करोगे तो कोई ना कोई myth अभी भी आपको दिखेंगे. Okay, this is what we have been discussing. So he saw that around him there are so many different things that can be compartmentalized, whether it is media, fashion, art, photography, architecture, literature, etc. According to Barthes, anything in culture can be sign and can send a specific message. And according to him, whatever there are things that are present around you in the culture are always signs. Even a picture is a science, and you read it according to your culture. The fashion that we see, the media, the art that we see, all have a connotative and a denotative meaning attached to it according to the culture you are in. In his methodologies, Barthes described one method of deciphering these messages. He will talk about how to decipher the message, how to look about the solutions for this message. According to Barthes, myth is a type of speech itself. The original meaning of the Greek mythos, the word Greek mythos से आता है myth, which means the word, the myth or the story. Myth then is a system of communication. Just as language is needed for communication, your myth itself is a system of communication or a message, a mode of signification. This means that everything can be myth provided that it conveys some meaning or a message. So whatever the objects are in front of you, they are myths, they are decodable, they are cultural signs or they are icons. So as I told you, photographs are the best example. Photographs सब लोग अपने अपने हिसाब से पढ़ते हैं. It itself is a type of a sign or an icon. So since language is the universal method of communication in humans, we can potentially convert anything into language. And it is in our potential to convert anything into language in a very systematic manner. Speech of this kind, that means myth, is a message in itself. So it cannot be confined to oral or written speeches. You can create different experiences out of one picture that you have. So a photograph is a kind of a speech in itself. And he said this in his essay, Methodologies, that if you see a photograph, it is nothing but a speech. In this way, in the same way as the newspaper article is also a speech, a way to communicate. If an object means something, it becomes a speech. If you see something, it becomes a speech because you will talk about it. Myth is a semiological system. Methodology is a part of the science of semiology discovered by Saussure. So this is the concept that Saussure talked about and Barthes actually used it. So what are the principles around which myth works? The main principle of Barthes' analysis of myth is that myth is something that is hidden. Myths are hidden, but you have to decipher it. You have to decode it. You need to unravel and uncover the box to bring it out. You have to compartmentalize it. Myth has a message, and it needs to be what? It needs to be deciphered. It is the intent of the message that you need to look after. So this work, The Photograph Message, was then written in 1961. It's an essay that he wrote, and this essay came in this work. The Image, Music and the Text is the book in which this essay is located in. So this essay, The Photographic Message, is written in this book, The Image, Music and Text. So what is he talking about? He actually talks about how a press photo is a perfect example of the decoding or the speeches that we create. So this photo that you see creates a myth in itself. It has a denotative meaning. You will describe it. It becomes connotative also because you use your own cultural background to talk about it, right? The message without a code is a denotative meaning. Connotation happens as production happens and you see the image further. Adding text further connotes just as adding images to the text would create a more denotative message. So you can add more pictures, that is a denotative message that you are giving. It is without code, but you will decipher it, you will talk about it. As you talk about it, it becomes connotative. Then the photographic message, again in 1961, the photographic message, again we have something about it. So the photo connotations are cultural and historical. This is what I was telling. कि जितनी भी आपकी फोटोज आप देखते हैं वो कुछ ना कुछ कल्चरल रिप्रेजेंटेशन होता है उनके अंदर और हिस्टोरिकल रिप्रेजेंटेशन. There are no universal denotations. There can never be one way of reading anything. There can be number of ways, multiple ways in which you can read something. So one picture that says something to you does not mean it never is going to say something for another person, right? So one picture can have different meaning, and for talking about it, you're going to use language, you're going to use myths, so it becomes a speech. It becomes a system in itself. Then rhetoric of the image, that this is an essay that came out in 1964, again in The Image, Music and the Text. It also talks about how an advertising photo is very significant image and it's very intentional and a number of meanings can be decoded. The photo is nothing but a pseudo-truth, functions to naturalize the myth. Photos are pseudo-truths. You create truth because of the photos. Then you have Writing Degree 0 that was written in 1953. It's a book that came out. It is divided into two parts with a standalone introduction also. So one part contains 4 short essays in which Barthes distinguishes the concept of writing from that of the style. So according to him, sometimes people focus a lot on style and not on the writing part. So according to him, the writing and the style are two important parts and you have to focus on it. कि कौन सा ज़्यादा important है. So style and language are important and writing is important too. But these are two different things. It was published as a series of articles in Albert Camus' journal, and this journal is called as Compact. a very important and a new information to add to your notes. This was published as an article in Albert Camus' journal Combat. It establishes Barthes as a leading critic of the modernist literature in France, and it also introduces the concept of écriture or scription as distinguished from style, language and writing. So écriture is different. It brings out how you can write about it. Then SEV or SZ, match the following में ये question already आ चुका है. 1970 में this work was written. This work is again by Roland Barthes. It's a very important work. Here in this work, he is going to read the text called Sarsarine. Sarsarine, this is a work by Balzac that came out in 1830. This work, Sarsarine, is a story. It's like a Persian. It is a story about this Persian artist Sarsarine, and Roland Barthes is going to read this story, and he is going to talk about the 5 codes that are there, around which you can see the story is positionalized, and you can read and decode the story in this manner, right? So this basically is a story about this Persian artist Sarsarine who travels to Rome and falls in love with this opera diva. एक opera में काम करने वाली diva के साथ उन्हें प्यार हो जाता है, who is actually a castrato. So this is a story basically who sees S as an image of a perfect woman and then sculpts a statue in her honor. Upon discovering Z's identity, S attempts to kill him in range, claiming that he himself has now been castrated, right? So this is the basic plot if you read about Sarsarine, but we see Roland Barthes introducing a very important concept. This concept is the enigma, how to read the text. He talked about this enigma, that there can never be one truth. There are always different ways of reading a text. So this means there is plurality of texts. It's a concept that he talks about, and now you see him tilting towards post-structuralism after this work. So he said there are 5 codes, and you look at these 5 codes, and this is going to make the work very visible to you. So as I told you, as a structuralist, he said that everything is in compartments. हर चीज एक events के basis पे होता है. So with this code, we are going to look at the events that are there. So there is one, for the first code that you will look is the hermeneutic code. You have the proratic code, the cultural code, the semic code and the symbolic code. So these are the 5 codes: 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So these are the 5 codes that are always present in a text that you have. And here he is going to read Sarsarine by Balzac. So what is a hermeneutic code? These are the enigmas that you have. These are actually going to drive you crazy to read the text further. These are the questions, the elements that will build up your suspense. So you read the text. There is something inside you that will say to read the text further. This enigma is created because of the hermeneutic code. There are different questions about the narrative. They inform your knowledge. You become more and more curious. These are the hermeneutic codes. Then you have the proratic codes. They actually indicate the different actions of the characters that imply further actions, right? So for example, first of all, this is the most visible code. ये कौन सा code है? This code is the most visible code. You have to remember this. Proratic जो code है आपका. There are the number of sequences in a text. We all know that this will happen. Okay, this will happen. I'll give you this example. Say damsel in distress is there on the tower and she is shouting because the dragon is coming towards her. We all know that the knight in shining armor will go there and protect the lady. This is something that we already know. These are the sequences that we know. Okay, so this indicates the actions that the character are further going to do. This also lead to your expectations because you knew that yes, something will happen, that my lady would be saved. Then there are cultural codes. This refers to the cliches that are used. Every writer knows that my reading audience is this. I am targeting on this audience. So what cliches, what phrases I can use, they are very well aware about it. References to a science or a body of knowledge. They know that this work is going to target this audience. Then there is the semic code, words whose connotations support or develop a theme. For example, you know that if I'm showing you a white cap, you will see that this is very much same to Nehru's cap that he used to wear. So you will directly think about Nehru because of the cap that I show you. So this means that there are always semic codes, there are always connotations attached to it. While symbolic code will tell you the detailed story. So okay, white is actually a symbol of peace. Okay, so they want peace. So semic and symbolic बहुत हद तक same है, but the symbolic code goes into deeper levels. It goes to deeper levels one step further. So the semic code, words whose connotations support or develop a theme, and the symbolic code, details in the story that are interpreted or figurative level. Antithesis भी हो सकते हैं. Antithesis is a good example of the symbolic code. So these are the 5 codes that he talked about. As a structuralist, what is he saying? Everything is in structures. There are given events. You have the proper meanings given to you. But as a post-structuralist, he will say that the photographs can be decoded. The connotation and the denotation is there. We have writerly and readerly texts. You know that the things are not that simple. You cannot positionalize everything into one. So you should know these terms also associated with Roland Barthes, writerly and readerly texts, and you should read these works. Okay, so I'll show you this picture. This will make it very clear. These are the most important works by Roland Barthes. So you have writing degree 0, very important, methodologies, the photographic message, rhetoric of the image, and introduction to the structural analysis of narratives and the fashion system. You have works like The Death of an Author, the most important work. What is he saying here? After writing the text, the author dies. Now you just have the text and you interpret it in your way. There is never one meaning. There is plurality of meaning. It came out in 1968. Then you have Empire of Science. You have Smith, The Pleasure of the Text. You have Roland Barthes, A Lover's Discourse, and Camera Lucinda. So I hope this is clear and you can note these things down. With this, I will just end up the video, and I hope you are clear. If you still have doubts related to this concept, you can ask me that in the comment section. Start making your notes. There are a number of words that are associated, number of concepts that are associated with Roland Barthes. I hope I made this clear. If you still have doubts, you can ask me that in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you.